And it's almost normal for music to serve the agendas of governments and commercial markets, but the mission of the Eureka Ensemble is to combine its performances of classical music with an element of social action. And that will be the case on May 12th in a concert of works by women composers with collaboration by singers from homeless shelters. To tell us about the project, we'd like to welcome the ensemble's music director, Kristo Kondakçi, and its composer in residence, Stephanie and Boyd. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I want to start with Kristo. Go back to the idea for this performance and maybe a little bit of your own background. Because
sure. So Eureka's mission, as I've explained, is to use music as a platform for social action and community engagement. We pick a social cause, create partnerships in the community, and find a way to use music to address that cause. Mm-hmm. Last year, I had the amazing fortune of meeting a man named Jonathan Pallant, who started the Dallas Street Choir, which is a homeless choir in Dallas, and they perform in Carnegie Hall once or twice a year, and the idea is to use music to bring the community together and raise awareness of the issues that that community faces. And in my own personal history, I've grown up working in the shelters. I went to Jesuit school, and you had to do 100 hours of community service a year, and I did a lot of that work in the shelters. So when Stephanie and I met later in the summer 2017 to come up with a project for this year, for this concert, that was in the back of my head.
Stephanie, it's more common to hear about composers commissioned to write music for some kind of a prestigious musician. You're writing music for people from homeless shelters. So what does that do for you?
It means that I had a huge weight on my shoulders. I felt really responsible to make sure that this was going to be a piece that was really truthful and honest to their experiences, but that ultimately had an incredibly empowering and fulfilling and healing ending by the end of this nearly 20-minute piece.
Now, this is based on poems by a writer and also a women's advocate, and this is pretty, strong stuff here.
It's really strong. So the poet is Jessica Lynn Sushan, and she and I actually rode the bus together in high school, but I've definitely spent more time working with her on this piece than I ever, did interacting with her in high school. But thanks to Facebook, I realized about a year ago that this girl from high school was all of a sudden an award-winning poet. And so I said, Jessica, can you send me some of your work? And she did, and I was like, holy cow, because it talks about the difficult parts of the female experience and also about trauma and abuse. And so when Kristo and I were thinking about this over the summer about what text we should use for this piece that we wanted to do, I said, well, here's her dissertation, master's dissertation, read through it. And Kristo, I was
very moved, as you can imagine.
Yeah, so it's
such a personal story that she was sharing through her poetry.
So I cried a lot while I was composing it, because you internalize the text and you hear the harmonies in the music, and it's been a really powerful and beautiful experience to work with Jessica on this.
Kristo, what's it been like for the women performing this?
I've experienced, from my own side, a complete transformation in how I deal with people. But from their side, they've learned how to better communicate with each other, how to feel part of a group in a way that isn't labeled as homeless. One of them actually texted me just 2 mornings ago saying, "Thank you for making me feel like a person again, because I haven't felt like a person in 20 years."
And what have you seen, Stephanie?
I only met everybody yesterday. I just came in from Manhattan, and being able to talk with these women before the rehearsal and to talk about the music and to talk about the text. There's certain parts of the text that they really love just singing, and then being in this church, watching them rehearse, and realizing that so many of them they've memorized the music. They aren't even looking at the music anymore. They're just singing, and looking straight at Kristo. That was incredibly amazing and humbling also when rehearsal's done and they're walking out of the door still humming the melodies. That's really, it makes me feel good.
So you might even have the audience doing that as well. Kristo, what about some of the other works in the program? Because we have a new work, but you also have a sort of a classic in a way too.
So the whole program is features works by American female composers. And one of the big pieces is the Amy Beach Symphony. And if you haven't heard of Amy Beach, she actually grew up here in this area. She studied at New England Conservatory, served on the board in the 20s and 30s. In 1896, she wrote this massive 45-minute long orchestral work, her Gaelic Symphony, and the BSO premiered it. Really pretty amazing piece. You know, she took to heart what Dvorak said would be the core of American classical music, which he said would be spirituals. For her, it was Gaelic, Irish, and Scottish folk tunes. So every single motive in the piece represents a very direct Gaelic, Scottish, or Irish folk.
And Chris, there's a backstory here about her marriage and I guess restrictions on her musical activities.
Well, for one thing, she wasn't really given the chance to study orchestration. She had to learn it from scratch by herself, primarily because she was a woman. And women weren't really seen as writing orchestral music at that time.
Stephanie, you have a backstory. Your grandmother.
My grandmother, yeah. So my grandmother was a piano prodigy who grew up during the Great Depression, and she faked her way through music school on her ear because she couldn't read music, but her ear was amazing. And then she got married and had children, and so she would compose just by herself in the summers. And so it was really amazing to sort of grow up expecting to be able to improvise with grandma or learning her music, so that whenever anybody is like, well, what's it like to be a woman composer? Just say, well, my grandmother was the first composer I knew, so actually it's pretty like germane. So it's wonderful to now be a woman having a career, and in some ways I feel like I'm carrying on the legacy that my grandmother started but wasn't able to really make good on.
Kristo, this concert is going to be, not just in any old place with good acoustics. This is going to be in a church that's very close to a program that serves the homeless, right?
Yeah, it's going to be at the Church of the Covenant on Newbury Street. And what's special about the church, aside from being a National Historic Landmark, is that the basement is a women's shelter. They service about 300 women every day, homeless women and abused women and poor women.
Right. And we should mention, if people want some more information about the ensemble, is there a place they can check that out?
Right on our website. Go to eurekaensemble.org.
And Stephanie, I should mention, you've got some your works on YouTube, so if people just put your name in, they'll find some interesting music.
They'll find me, and they'll also find my music at stephaniennboyd.com.